So, as you could tell, I just got through running across the cornfields with my dogs to come over here on a Saturday and say hi to everybody. So I'll get better at this. We'll get higher quality in the editing room because I do all my own production too. Anyway, again, love you guys. Go say hi to somebody. Just wave at somebody. Start there. Just wave at some people. Younger people, older people. I did that backwards, didn't I? Younger people, older people. Just go out and say hi. Let's start. There was a hashtag that Barbie wants to get started. I'll have to look that up. I'll have to look through some of the old films. We need to be pulling together and discussing these items, and not be afraid to have a dinner. What do they call it? Table dinner, or around the dinner table. Politics is a device to keep this country moving forward. I know that all the people in the middle class want this country to keep moving forward. I also know that the politicians we have currently in place on both sides of the aisle, some way more than others, but we have a situation now where the politicians don't want us to necessarily move forward. They want, and our education and our information to be lower and lower so that they can control and control more. They have very perfect lives, really. And these are the things we don't understand. You know, we need to really be able to have the courage and have the patience to be looking at our politicians more directly, with more information. As I've said before, we have a utopia coming, and if we don't have control over our politicians, as that utopia comes, then we won't have that utopia. We will be moved into whatever needs that the country has, without the rewards. This middle class of America has been stronger and done more than my own. I know I'm biased, but than any other. As a matter of fact, all the middle classes, around the world, is what the economy is built on, and we have no say at how that money is spent. Hey, brothers and sisters, how you guys doing out there? Welcome to Insights and Straight Talk. I'm your host, Rod Duff, and as always, I'm very excited about this show. I was very nervous a minute ago because I had multiple sounds coming in my ear, and I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to get that out of my ear before I started this monologue. That was going to be a bit of a challenge, but I found the right window and got it all dialed in. Looks like we have somebody just jumping on now. So again, I'm going to welcome you to Insights and Straight Talk. As I said before, I'm very excited about this show. Excuse me. Because we're stepping into a conversation that feels like it was written directly into the margins of my own memoir. You know the one I'm talking about. What the fuck happened when I was in my 50s? That memoir is built on 13 whispered truths that showed me the real story of my life, a story of reinvention, of nonlinear thinking, of waking up one day and realizing the world never really actually understood my mind, how it worked. And realistically, maybe I didn't understand it either. That's why this conversation matters tonight, because Angie Dixon is one of the few people who speaks directly to people like me. People who don't move in straight lines, people who build 5 things at once, people who chase ideas, create systems, tear them down, rebuild them, sprint, stall, nap, restart, and still manage to produce more than most specialists ever dream of. Angie says neurodivergent minds are not scattered. They are multi-passionate engines of possibility. Oh, I love that. And I know thousands of people in our audience today, will hear that themselves in that description. So my memoir talks about the moment I realized reinvention wasn't optional. It was literally wired into me. Some of us were never meant to pick one lane. Angie calls these people Leonardos. And I think many of you watching today have lived your entire lives as Leonardos without ever knowing a word for it. Got a couple talking points here. One of the whispers in my book came the day I understood that creativity does not move in a straight line. Angie teaches this spiral thinking, looping, sprinting, rethinking. It looks chaotic from the outside, but inside the chaos is clarity waiting to emerge. Let's talk about masking. A lot of people my age never had language for this. We were raised to hide our overwhelm, our intensity, our sensitivity. We learned to pretend our brains were just like everyone else's. Angie is one of the few people who can explain the emotional cost of that and the relief that comes when you finally stop performing. We've talked a lot about that. And another point here, the late diagnosis awakening. This is something I hear a lot from people on. Weekly sometimes, adults who suddenly look back on their entire life and say, now it all makes sense. The jobs, the burnout cycles, the relationships, the restless creativity. Angie has become a translator for that moment. Productivity for neurodivergent minds does not follow the corporate rules, you know? It follows biological rhythms, bursts, rests, naps, hyper-focused, followed by recalibration. My own life looks exactly like that. Angie gives people permission to stop fighting their brain and start designing around its real operating system. Burnout hits differently for autistic and ADHD adults. This is important. This is critical. One of these points that we're going to be going through, because this hits hard, it hits fast, and it hits silently. Many of you have lived through those kind of crashes. But there's something else Angie talks about that I find powerful. What comes after? The clarity, the alignment, the new rules you create for your life. So many families in this audience have kids that think this way. Kids who are brilliant in ways schools do not measure. Kids who don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because the system lacks imagination. Angie's work helps parents understand the difference. In my memoir, I explain how my life has always been this constellation, not a line. Look at media, politics, real estate, automation, education, machine design, writing, community building. People used to ask why can't I just pick one? Angie would say to them, because your brain wasn't built for one. It was built for many. Now know this, creativity is not polite. It does not wait its turn. It does not clock in at 8 and check out at 5. Angie teaches people to stop apologizing for the storms in their minds and start using those storms as fuel. So tonight is your chance. Your chance for what, you ask? To ask the real questions you never say out loud. Why do I think this way? Why do I crash so hard? Why do I have 1,000 ideas but struggle with the small little tasks? Why does my child melt down over things other kids handle easily? Why do I feel out of step with traditional expectations? Angie's here to answer the questions most people carry alone. So tonight, we step into a conversation that is personal, it's necessary, and it's long overdue. A conversation for the creators, the thinkers, the builders, the restless minds, the misunderstood kids, and the adults who finally realized they were never broken. They were simply wired differently. It is my honor to welcome the author of the Leonardo Trait, the voice behind the Unmasked Summit, and a champion for all nonlinear minds out there. Please welcome my new bestest friend in the world, Angie Dixon. Welcome. How you doing, Angie?
I'm doing great, Rod. Thanks for having me. That was a beautiful
It's
introduction.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Uh, you know what? We have 131 people already on right now. So,
Oh,
you have a new fan base building here. I can tell you right now that this is a conversation that on this show, in this audience, maybe some new ones, maybe some reoccurring ones, people that are regulars, but as a very important anchor conversation within our platform here is those things with mental health. And when I say that, that brings in, well, it's not all mental health is mental health. I mean, we're hearing lots of studies about ADHD being way overdiagnosed for kids, for boys especially in the kindergarten and younger ages. So this is a cornerstone conversation. But beyond that, Angie, this is I'm looking into a mirror right now. This is my life right now that we're about ready to talk about. So, we always like kind of get us on the journey that got you to the journey that brought you here to us today, Angie.
okay. You talked about all the projects and the, you know, 5 different directions at once. And, that was me for my entire life. I have like 37 tabs open in my brain. And I'm
I'm looking at them
flipping
right
back
now. I'm looking
through,
at them.
flipping back and forth through them. And I never was able to really settle down. I tried working a corporate job, and that went really well for about 6 months while I was getting my feet under me and learning the ropes. And then I got bored and was miserable. And I finally said, I'm going to start a web design business and just work for myself. And so then I had like 5 or 6 different businesses going at one time because, of course, I can't just have a web design business. I have to have a web design business and a copywriting business and, all these different things. And in 2006, I was visiting my best friend in Missouri. I live in Arkansas. I was visiting her and we were talking, and I had been reading some books on creativity and projects and managing all your projects. And these books were not what I needed. They were fine books, they just weren't for neurodivergent creative people. And one of them recommended having a, a file cabinet, a whole file cabinet for each project. I said, I don't have a house big enough. I'd need a second house just to store all the file cabinets. And my friend's daughter said, oh, and one of the women referred to people who are who are really creative as Ben Franklin's and moving between a lot of projects. And I said, I really just don't think that's it. I don't think Ben Franklin is the model here. And my friend's daughter said, well, who is the model? And I said, Leonardo. I mean, this just popped out of my mouth. I said, it's Leonardo. I think there's a set of traits that we could call the Leonardo trait that people
Ah,
have, that they're multi-passionate, they're creative, they move around a lot in their projects. And my best friend said, you need to write that book. And I said, you know, I do need to write that book. And I started it the next day, and I've written I'm now in the 4th edition of this book. I've been working on it for 20 years. What really got me where I am today is that 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with autism. And that diagnosis opened my world. I realized, started seeing who I am and how I am in relation to my neurodivergence.
Angie, real quick, just how long ago was this that you were diagnosed? Because it was later
2
on in
years
life,
ago. 2
just
years
two
ago.
years ago. Wow, all this time you had no words for it.
Right. I just thought I was weird and different and scattered. And even though I knew I was a Leonardo because I'd written this book and I was saying, we're not scattered, we're not broken, I didn't really understand all of it. And I had decided that I had said everything I had to say about the Leonardo trait several years ago. And then I got my diagnosis and I thought, I wish I'd written this book knowing I'm neurodivergent. And then I thought, I've done 3 editions of it. I can do a 4th. So, as you referred to, I tore everything down, just trashed the whole book, and started over as basically not handbook or a manual or a systems guide, but more of a manifesto. This is when I finally get it, when I finally realize what's going on. And so this is the 4th edition, and it really leans heavily into the neurodivergent aspects of things. I talk a lot about the burnout that you mentioned because it is burnout and masking are such big risks for us because we try
Yeah.
so hard to be neurotypical, but the truth is we're not broken neurotypical people. We're a completely different kind of person.
I like the way you say that. Um, in the masking, I've got a particular because this is a new revelation. This term, and when I say a new revelation, you'll hear. I told you this is a cornerstone conversation within this platform, and in the book, I started writing that book. Actually, this platform, this podcast came about because I had written a memoir, right? So you do a book proposal and you go look for agents and so forth. And they love the writing, everything's set up, but then they came to, do I have a platform? Well, I didn't have really a platform. I mean, I had 20 followers on this and 5 over here, some friends of mine over here, whatever. And then so I said, okay, well, I'll create this little platform thing, at least get a few numbers going and this and that. Let me work at that. I love to talk, so it shouldn't be too hard. What am I going to talk about? The great middle class. So we started down that path. But so that, again, here we go. We're going through these multiple different businesses or aspects. But the reason I say that is because last May, when I started that, producer Barbie helped me through a break that I had. And in that break, coming out of it, I realized I was always living behind a mask. I wasn't being me to them. And I didn't really know who me was till after all that. So that's why I bring that up. But the masking thing, what is that? What does that look like to you? We got a couple questions starting to come in here, but I'm going to hold off on them for a second. What does masking look like to you? What is that? What is that? What is that for you?
Sure, masking is, really when you feel like you need to look like you think other people feel. I always love the phrase trying to match your insides to other people's outsides. You think other people really have it together, and you look at your life and you've got 15 projects going, and you haven't held one job ever for more than like a year or two, and you're it really is a spiral. And but you look at other people and you think, oh, they've got it together. They're holding a job. They've got a steady, life. And my life looks like, a unicorn exploded. And so you try to put
I
on
love that.
a mask where you try to have us present a face of all these projects are organized and steady and I'm working on them in order. And you try to, especially with productivity, you really try to get into the hustle culture, to do what you think other people want you to do. And the more you do it, the more miserable that you get. And the more miserable you get, the more you burn out. And burnout in us looks like depression a lot of the time, or it can look like laziness, like, you just are laying in bed and not doing anything for days. But that's because you can't. You have burned through all of your energy. You're not lazy and you're not procrastinating. I mean, sometimes we do procrastinate and sometimes we do have a lazy moment, but
Sure.
burnout is not either of those things. Burnout is a physical, physiological effect of trying to be somebody that you're not.
That's got to be well. I know it is. I'm just going to say it's got to be, just as a lead back to you, but I know it is from personal experience. Burnout is emotionally and physically. That is, so what you're saying is that's almost a trigger to getting into recalibrating, right? You burn out, so you're done. The as Barbie, and some of her one of her first Barbieisms was, you can't drink from an empty cup, right?
Right.
And we were talking about a different subject at that point. It was the stress to starting the show. We were everything was going wrong, this and that, and we were on each other, and we were trying to get this done, and finally she filled it with laughter. So different, slightly different, but along the same lines here. And when you burn out, um, is that an inevitable thing? Like for the not the non for the neurodivergent, is that a regular cycle? Here's why I ask. The mass thing that we were just talking about a second ago is very interesting to me, because it's fresh to me, right? I just went through that, and now becoming something who I actually am instead of who I believe everybody else thinks I should be. But what I'm asking is, then as we rolled into the burnout question, is this a common cycle, or is that when we just go too far? Is there, or am I asking something that doesn't have an answer to? I don't know.
I think it's a little bit of both. As long as you are trying to mask and be something you're not, I think burnout is going to be inevitable. I will say unmasking is
They're
a
connected
cycle.
then. Okay, so burnout
Right.
happens more often, right? More often when you're being somebody else. Now, that the second half of my question, just to add to what you're saying right now, the second half of that is, I think there's a lot more people that have this behind a mask. All those people that seem to have it all okay. A lot of them are just doing what I've been doing, right? I mean, there's a lot more out there than we
Exactly.
than we, right? Go ahead, go for it.
You, you know, back to the whether it's inevitable, and then I'm going to come back to what other people look like. I think unmasking really is a cycle. I know sometimes I will mask. Even now, I'll think, oh, I should do this. An example of that is I only own novelty t-shirts. Today's t-shirt has an otter and it says otter nonsense.
Oh, I like that.
So
Oh, I
I
like that.
only own funny t-shirts. And yesterday I said, I wonder if I should buy some solid colored t-shirts to wear on podcasts. And my friend said, no. Why would you do that? That's not who you are. You don't own solid t-shirts. And I thought, well, and then I realized that I was trying to, fit what I think people on podcasts should look like. But the people who are asking me to be on their podcast are asking me because of who I am.
Right.
In fact, my headshot, I'm in a tuxedo t-shirt with the little bow tie printed on and the lapels.
Did you see that on the YouTube, the thumbnail? That I have that picture up for your thumbnail. It's guys. You guys have probably already seen it. Who's been here in the audience? But go back. It's a pretty cool shirt.
Yeah, and so people know what they're getting. They don't expect me to be dressed up. They know I'm going to be wearing something silly. But I just want to say unmasking is not something you do once, and it's not something that once you learn, you don't ever do it again. I mean, sometimes you start thinking, oh, I should try to be a little more normal, and it happens. You shouldn't, when you find yourself masking and trying to be something you're not, that's okay. These things happen. We have a bad day, we get tired, we see something that we think, is not quite right about us, and we think, oh, I should be different. I should conform a little more. And that's just part of being a different person. Sometimes you're going to have a bad time, a bad day, and you think, oh, it's because I'm neurodivergent, it's because I'm weird, it's because I'm different. It's because you're human. We are different humans than neurotypical people, but everybody has this. Going back to what you said about people aren't as together as they look,
Right.
nobody is on the inside how they look on the outside. Everybody has something going on. Everybody is pretending a little bit. Everybody is working through stuff. I mean, there is no perfect human.
Yeah, and nor should there be, in my opinion. I mean, we are, like you said, a human species. So we're made up of cells and energy and frequencies and histories. Whatever tools our parents had in raising us, obviously, is part of that mixture in. And so you and I both talk about that we're not. This is not a straight line. This you call it spiral. When you rebuild out of a spiral, you're actually coming back with experience of what you had. So you're able to constantly build up if you're aware and you're understanding. Let me ask you though, the masking. I once that mask dropped, I thought, okay, now I'm a totally different person. I'm always going to be different, which by a great deal, a great part of me is different, very much so. I'm a more caring, I'm a more understanding, I'm not missing signals that I had always been missing. However, at that point, I thought, okay, so now that skin's off. Now this is who I am forever. Well, it's interesting you said that because you do kind of fall back in at certain moments when you think you need that, I don't know, protection or distance or something. Well, how do you respond to that? And then I'll get into some of these questions. We've got probably 7 or 8 already, and some of them are really good. Well, they're all really good. Some of them are extra. But when you said that, that was the first, because I just recently I've started to go, oh, okay, I'm not totally different. I'm not this has been about a year and a half path for me, this part of it, what I'm talking about right now. So what do you do about that? Or do you do anything? Or do you just acknowledge it? And what do you do? Teach me.
I just acknowledge it, and I have the best friend in the world, and she is really good at.
My
I'll start
producer, Barbie.
ruminating. I start ruminating about this stuff, and she says, "You need to remember who you are." And I think we all need someone in our lives who can just say, you need to remember who you are. And it's not because I'm the author of the Leonardo Trait. It's not because I know all these things. It's because I am who I am. It's not about being Angie Dixon. It's about I am a neurodivergent person. I am really, different and unique. And I bring something to the world that no one else does. But sometimes I have to be reminded of that.
I love that. I love that. I want to get in a little bit into your book and the messages within it. I do want to pop on a couple of these questions, which will actually set us up for doing that.
Sure.
For instance, how, I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry. I'm really
Amy
sorry, ma'am.
Chilton, maybe?
Say that. Say it again, Angie. Would you?
Amy? Amy
Amy.
Chilton, maybe?
Amy Chilson. Okay. Oh, I get you. Oh, I get you. Okay, gotcha. I can't see as well as I wish I could
Right.
sometimes. So Amy, wow, Angie's insights are powerful. How do we better embrace non-linear creativity daily? I'm going to love to listen to this one right here. And then I do want to get into some of the specifics of your book.
That's a great question, and I'm
It
really
is.
glad you asked that because it's not something that I usually think to bring up. But the way that I do this is I have generally somewhere between 7 and 97 projects going at one time. And I do have a to-do list of things that need to be done, for my book, for my summit, for my podcast. But I also plan huge swaths of time where I'm basically doing nothing. I don't always do nothing, but I have 2 or 3 hours, and I'm fortunate that I'm able to do that. A lot of people have jobs, they have kids who are
Hey,
smaller than
Angie,
mine.
Angie, let's hover here for a second. Hang on just a second right there because I just want to insert something. When you're talking about you have swaths of time that you set aside or however that works out, that you're not doing anything. That's actually when your mind is for me, I'll be doing stuff all the time and doing that and doing this and whatever. And then at home I'll like hang out or do something or eat something and then just kind of like chill. That's when like these gems pop up. Is that why you're doing that or is that something different?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And my favorite thing is to listen to music. I'm kind of a
Exactly.
music geek. I don't call
Me
myself
too.
an audiophile because those guys are jerks, but, but I call myself a music geek. I have a nice audio player and some nice headphones, and I put those on, and I just kind of choose music at random based on my mood,
Right.
and I I really just kind of float and listen to music, and I get my best ideas that way. Some people take a shower or a bath and just, I think it's the disengagement. And even if you can only do 15 minutes of that, I mean, except for writing my book, I'm basically retired with a disability. I don't have a lot of things that I have to do because I can't do them. So I had a lot more
Mhm.
time than most people. But if you can have 15 minutes of staring off into space or listening to music or taking an extra long shower, your brain wants to drift and float and come up with these great
Uh,
ideas. And
and
but
and
we
so your
spend so much
brain.
time
I'm
we just
sorry.
spend
I'm
so much
sorry.
time engaged.
Yeah. So okay. So that's exactly. It's kind of like dreaming, but different. So when you're saying that, it's kind of like your brain is engaged so much of the time that when you step back and go into this floating or whatever, however different people describe that thing that you're talking about right now, that's when your brain has its recess, and that's when the brain just is, it's got all this stuff like when you're dreaming going on back here, and it's filing it away and doing all that, And then every once in a while it says, oh, by the way, while you're floating, it goes, oh, by the way, you didn't notice this, but I put a couple things, I AI'd it, put a couple things together, boom. What about this idea? That's what happens, right?
Right, exactly.
I love that. That was a really cool description. That was a lot of fun. So if you're what you're describing now is how you're better embracing that because I describe it like this: we don't live in a straight line, and we talked about the circular, but also life is a series of you're making mid-course corrections, and I call it being on a path. And what you got, by the way, there's 420 people on right
Oh,
now.
wow.
Yeah. I told you this is a really important subject matter to this platform because of all the things I talked about before. The book led to this, led to that, led to this. It all came from, you know how you say compartmentalize things, right? That's kind of a
Hmm.
corporate. We
Yeah.
compartmentalize things. Well, what happened to me is, as Barbie describes it, that blew up one day. It was May 6th, the evening of, and all my boxes were blown up out on the ground, and I literally had a collapse, a mental break, and I had to go to the show. I was at a show in Miami for my industry, and I had to. Man, that was the weirdest freaking experience of my life. I mean, I'm afraid of everything. I don't want to go outside. I'm afraid of going outside. I've just hit rock bottom, but I got to go put that mask on one more time and try not to sweat through every shirt as I'm walking the aisles of all these people who know me. I know what went on. They don't know, but I feel they do. That was the most bizarre time of my life, man. So go on with what you were saying. That's what you're talking about is that floating time is how you're better embracing. So you're pulling in the energy, you could say, but you're pulling in the benefits of your brain's
Right.
operational system.
And
That's beautiful.
I understand that everybody can't spend 2 hours listening to music. I totally get that. 5 minutes, 15 minutes, while you're sitting at a stoplight, if you just kind of course you're watching the traffic, of course you're watching the light, but you just kind of disengage, and maybe you're not thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner. Maybe you're just kind of thinking about your project that you're working on and what you're doing, and you know where you're going to go next with whatever you're working on.
And that just kind of that's when you're on excuse me when you're on idle, right? So if you're sitting at a light and you're just kind of daydreaming, right? Some people call it daydreaming. All these things have been around. There's so much we don't listen to that's been around us in information and education and proper ways to look at things. And now we're just coming back around with experts like yourself that are able to come back and go through these things. So the Leonardo effect. You said this is your fourth edition. Before we go back to the questions, I've got one here that I'm really excited about for you to answer. Like I said, we're still well. We've got a few more. 423 people, 433 people on. So this is a message that is being well retained. But before we go into this question, how does so you've got four separate versions of your book. How does your book lay out? And do you go 1 through 4? Do you have different subject matters that people can attend to? Let's just spend a couple minutes. Quick plug for you, but just a couple minutes just to because everything we're talking about is based upon the writings, which are based upon your thinking, obviously. But how does that lay out? What does that look like? Volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, or edition 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, how does that book lay out?
The first three editions, there were differences between them. I came back and brought in new points, but they were all basically kind of a handbook or a manual for living in the
Okay,
world
that's
as
what I
it
thought.
is. And once I realized I was neurodivergent, I thought, we don't really need a handbook. We don't need a guide to mask better. What we need is to learn how to really be who we are all the time, as much as possible. I mean, like I said, you have a bad day, you're tired, somebody says something that hits you a little wrong, and you feel like you should mask again. That happens. But what my goal with this book is that we learn to really be who we are as much of the time as possible.
See, there was one I mistimed that a little bit. I was just a little bit behind you there. Um, but but there's a couple of really good questions coming up on this subject right now. Um, this one was before I left it up here because this is going to be a big one. For there's not like you and I are semi-retired, right? So I had a machinery business that I built up over 30 years, and and so we'll get into that in a second. Um, there's a lot of people that still have to thrive in the traditional workplaces. I hated my business. I loved the marketing. I loved the sales. I used to do these kind of things for marketing for the business. We had like up to 30 people, and different build cycles and so forth. But I really hated the whole corporate side of the thing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hated all of that, and I loved the other. As a matter of fact, Barbie told me once after I transitioned uh, away from the corporate entity into this, which is what I do. I do this 6 days a week, 6 shows a week, plus all the other stuff that's involved in it. I hate adding in the data entry stuff, but it's minor compared to everything else. Now I'm just playing a video game. But to Richard's point here, how can nonlinear thinkers ever thrive in traditional workspaces? Because I know for a fact that's not. I never thought about it before, but looking back, the what did you call it? The late when people discover later on in life that, oh, as I look back at my life, now I understand. Well, looking back at my life, now I understand why I hated uh, doing the thing. I had three-quarters of the thing that I built my whole life upon because it was out of ego. This is out of love. So how can we handle that traditional workplace?
I mean, yeah, obviously people have to work. We don't have a universal basic income that provides our needs. And so people work. And I do think it's possible to thrive. I think you need a couple things. You need to be authentic, which we've been discussing. And I think you really need to find the right fit for you. And that doesn't necessarily mean a specific type of job. I mean, I think you can thrive working in fast food as a neurodivergent person if you have the right accommodations that, like, if you're working in fast food, maybe you need to be back in the kitchen where there's a lot going on and not standing at the counter, waiting for people to come to you. Maybe you need to be doing more of an active job. And I think being honest with a boss about what you need, and then really doing your absolute best no matter what the job is. I mean, obviously, but I think we get discouraged sometimes and we kind of phone things in because we feel like we're not
Mm,
thriving. We feel like we're not doing as well as we want to be doing, or we're not doing what we want to be doing, or we're just not quite ourselves. And I think, accommodations of putting you where you need to be to do what you need to do, giving you a little freedom, giving you a lot of stimulation. We do not do well when we're bored. I mean, I worked as a receptionist one time and I made the most amazing paperclip sculptures. because I was bored
Because
out of
you were
my
bored
mind.
as gotcha. I totally hear that, and it's almost like oxygen. You know, the stimulation is almost like oxygen uh, to somebody like us. Let's say. I want to ask you this one because we've been talking about the masking, right? Um, so, uh, Joed Hepburn. Boy, I'm doing terrible with names today. What is the biggest sign someone is masking without realizing it? Because this is kind of this is almost a tool masking if you're running it right. If you, I'm trying to
Right.
wrap my head around it still a little bit as far as because you're opening up something to me that I really hadn't thought about, but I just started thinking about in that wait a minute, I'm not totally a different person. I did take out the mask, no doubt about that, because I can feel it. I can feel that weight not being on there. You know, I can feel that authenticity that comes out, and it shows up in everything that we do, right? And you don't know that until after you're already there. But let's hit Joel here. What do you think about this one?
I think if you feel like something is just off in your brain, in your body, and you don't feel like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. You just feel like you're not really on. Like you're a
Ah,
little off, maybe a little sideways. You're like my day the other day, I felt like I was just a little not quite right. And I started thinking I had bombed a podcast, which I had not. I started, she told me later that it was one of the best ones she'd ever done. I just got in my head that I had bombed. I started thinking about the solid colored t shirts that I mentioned. I started thinking, maybe I'm just not cut out to do podcasts. And then I got this email saying, I want to have you on again after the book comes out. I thought, okay, so I'm sliding into what feels like a little bit of a depression, but really what it is that I'm feeling like I should mask and like being who I am is not working for me. But I have this evidence that being who I am really is working for me.
that's interesting. You put it that way because so here's the thing. We talk about our different guests on the show talk about we have three brains, right? We have the brain of the head, we have the brain of the heart, we have the brain of the gut instinct, right?
Hmm.
And coming out of those conversations, typically, it's what you're describing right now. We should be listening. So depending on your heart or your gut, you know, whatever reaction goes to the brain sends out the chemicals to do whatever our body needs to do to address whatever that moment is. And coming out of it, we talk a lot about we don't use our gut instinct. And our gut instinct is probably the best instinct that we have, but we ignore it. So what you're saying is if you feel a little bit off, step back. Your gut's telling you something, right? Your heart, however you whatever you way you want to look at it. But now you need to step back and say, okay, I'm feeling a little bit off. What you just described, I'm not feeling as confident or this and that. Then you have a gut check, right? You have that check. That's what you're describing there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's just, it happens. Everybody
It
has
does.
a bad day or a bad hour, a bad 5 minutes. You know, ups and downs are just part of being human. I mean, mental health is not a straight line. People who have good mental health and mental hygiene are not always stable and level. Even people, who take medication to keep them stable, they have days. You have ups and downs. If you're not having ups and downs, something is off.
Yeah, you're not doing very much. unless you do have ups and downs, because
Right.
those ups and downs come from challenges, right? You know what I'm noticing today? We get different audiences, and I get the joy of listening to. I get free advice, so I love this show because it's such a big deal. But I also, because I have that time and I'm reading through the messages all the time, I tend to see some trends on different subjects that have more girls or more men or more women or whatever, depending on the subject. Today, what's interesting, this subject, you would think it, now it's not 100% men, but if you notice while we're reading through here, there's a lot of men compared to only a few women on this subject today. It's kind of interesting if there's a trend there, if there's something inside that message. I here I am. I'm counting numbers while we're doing a show, right? Pretty typical, right? But I don't know if you noticed that, but there's a lot of men on today. For instance, Rob here, Gorski. How do you stay? And I think I know the answer to this. It could be, well, that's interesting to talk this one out. How do you stay motivated when your brain jumps between passions? I would think it keeps you being excited or motivated or energetic or whatever words you want to look for. But also that's also exhausting too. Now that I think about it, if you're jumping from this passion to that passion to this passion to that passion, then oh shit, where was I? Where was that tab? That's exhausting as well. Well, how would you answer Rob here, though?
Well, it is, I think there's a couple of things here. Staying motivated on between projects, I'll be working on something and I'll get a great idea for the other project. And I am very motivated on that. Staying motivated on the first project sometimes is a challenge. What I do, I've done this recently, is I have some kind of guidelines. I can have two projects at once. I try to stick with the same two projects through a given day. I don't work on, say, three projects in a day. And I also try to be careful about switching. And if something comes up that I really, really want to work on, I try to get what I am working on to a point where I can come back to it later. Um, and I try to be judicious in starting new things. If I'm starting something new, I need to have the time for it. If I don't have the time for it, I really need to set it aside, make a lot of notes, collect a lot of stuff, and put it in a box or in a box in my brain and come back to it when I've got the time. Um, it's I have a lot of projects. Right now I have a couple of major things that I'm working on, and I'm really trying to keep track of the things that need to be done and also allow myself time to paint or listen to music or watch TV because it's really easy to burn out from just doing too much.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I knew this. I knew this discussion, this chat today, it would really hit home on so many different levels because, like I said, I'm getting free advice. I mean, there's reinforcement in certain things, and then there's new ideas and new tools that I'm receiving here, which is fascinating. Rob's got another. He's got a follow up kind of thing here. It sounds like two questions right in a row. Obviously, Rob is dealing with something, and I have a feeling it's more about maybe it's his kid. That saying, "The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree." I think Rob and his kids have got a lively household at home. So he's asking here, how can we support kids who show multi-passionate tendencies early? And by the way, uh, your point is very tuned in, and the Leonardo effect is a beautiful name. I totally agree that although our who was the other guy you were talking about at the very
Ben
beginning?
Franklin.
Ben
In
Franklin is
Franklin.
obviously a fascinating dude, but Leonardo really dials this in. But um, there, just more recently, especially coming out of the argument of Leonardo, there's been this a lot of, if you've got ADHD, if most of those people are the most successful ones throughout history. So this is a capture, not bottled, but maybe bottled for, this is a capture of talent by like you said, by us just using our correct operating system. So how not to or delay the point too much. What about Rob's follow-up question here about his kids, who he's dealing with as well?
This is a good one for me. My son and I are basically the same person in two different bodies,
Yeah.
and he is so brilliant and he knows everything. Um, and he's always jumping around from topic to topic and idea to idea, passion to passion. And what we always did with both our kids, him and his neurotypical sister, is that we always encouraged them. But the main thing is we treated them like people from the minute they were born. We did not ever treat them, we didn't treat them like miniature adults, but we
Like
also didn't treat them like babies, even when they were babies. We didn't baby talk them. We didn't discourage them with, oh, you're not old enough to be interested in that. What we did was encourage their interests. And, my daughter at one point saved up her allowance. She was, I think, 6. She saved up her allowance to buy a little toy
that.
guitar. And I said, "Do you want to play the guitar? I'm going to buy you a kid's instruction manual on how to play the guitar. I'm going to get you a tuner so I don't have to listen to an out of tune guitar. And we are, you're going to play guitar if that's what you want to do." And she did. She played guitar for a year or so, which at 6 is, you know, forever. And she bought a better guitar, still small, but better, and we really encouraged them to do what they wanted to do. My son is really interested now he's a streamer. He streams his games that he plays. And we just say, that's great. That's amazing. We think that that's what you want to do. You should do that. We also taught them how to survive in the world, how to fit into the world as well as possible without sacrificing who they are, which is what we've been talking about this whole time. We just taught that in age appropriate ways. But the main thing is that we just encourage them to be the incredible humans that they are.
I love that. That's as parents, we're not just giving birth to kids and feeding and clothing them and that. We're parenting, right? And so what you're talking about now, I loved how you put that, both the brother and the sister. They have different brain structures, but you're still doing the parenting. That's how you support the kids, and offer whatever. Don't push away. Don't say, but you can't do this or that. But if you're going to do this, let's do this, and pull as much out of it as physically or mentally possible. So let's move on to Jeffrey here. See, I told you there's a lot of guys on today. This is crazy. Looks like
Yeah.
business too. A lot of them are in suits, at least ties here. What's the best way to now? I don't know if this is a typo or am I missing something to explain
Oh no.
AUDHD or is it ADHD?
That it's AuDHD, which is autism and
Oh,
ADHD together, which is what I have.
okay. I
This is
missed that. I
a
missed.
fabulous question
Yeah,
because
it is.
we're autistic,
Good job.
so we don't catch social cues. We need people to be very clear with us. We do not pick up on nuance at all. We need, and I think, just being clear about what you need is a great way to explain this. So we have all these artistic traits. Don't pick up on social cues, need clarity, need people to be really open about what they're trying to get us to understand. But we
Yep.
also have ADHD, so we have trouble focusing our attention for very long. We flit around a lot in our conversations, in our our activities, in our bodies. We're moving around. And one thing about AuDHD is we have the tendency of autistic people to latch onto a special interest and talk about it all the time. But we also have ADHD, so we can hyper focus on that topic. I can talk to you about music for hours. I went on a day trip with my husband right after I got my new audio player, and I think I talked just about the benefits of the new audio player for half an hour. And bless his heart, he's just over here asking questions and saying, "Uh huh, that sounds really cool.
He,
Does it do this?"
he
And
loves his girl. He loves his girl. He knows what to do.
and that's the thing. We have to remember these people love us and they want to support us. And if we tell them what we need clearly, then they will understand that and try to support us.
So this is a really important question. If you look at it, and it kind of backs into what we've been talking about. Kenneth here, another dude in a suit. Is it normal for creative cycles to swing from high energy? Because we talked about this about eight questions ago or so, something like that, to zero. That's that crash. That's that floating. That's that. So is it normal for those cycles to do that? And I kind of
Oh,
asked a similar
absolutely.
question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Just last week, I had a really big week. I was working on my book. I was working on the summit I'm hosting. I did several podcasts. And Wednesday night, I just really was so exhausted. I just crashed. And I took Thursday and Friday off because I could, because I'm fortunate that way. And by Saturday, I was like, okay, let's go. I'm ready to go again. But it definitely is normal. I think our energy cycles don't work the way neurotypical people's do. And we have
What would the
energy
contrast
and then
be?
we use it.
What would the contrast be? Neurotypical would be more less ups and less.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
more of a wave, and ours is more of like a tsunami. We get tons of energy and then we use it all. And, sometimes it takes a couple hours to come back. Sometimes it takes a couple days to really recover.
yeah.
It's absolutely normal.
And does that manifest itself sometimes almost into kind of like you've got not necessarily anxiety, but maybe more like depression or more like something's like you said about how do I know when I have a mask on? Something feels off. So a couple really cool things happened to me this last week, right? Like the Mangum Star, the newspaper here, brought me on to be their columnist. So now I'm a
Well,
published
that's
author.
amazing.
I know it's exciting. I'm so happy. I just sent off yesterday Saturday my second column uh, for the Mangum Star, and as a matter of fact, you subscribe to Substack. There's a mention of it in there if you happen to go and look at the newsletter.
Yeah.
But so there that's going on, and then there's this thing going on with some sponsors, some things I've been working on for trying to get this thing to monetize so I can do it the rest of my life from wherever I want to, right? Because all I need is a mic, some electricity, and some sound waves to go out into the atmosphere, and I could do it as long as I can keep these different softwares paying and this and that. But in the midst of all that, it was almost like, okay, these things are now in action. It was almost like the last couple of days have been kind of like not depressed, but something uneasy because it just feels like, and maybe it's because that cycle is ended now. All that energy was going into this, and we're doing shows every day, and things are popping, and we're getting, bigger numbers. We're still at 400. We're, God, this went by fast, didn't it? We're well over an hour now already, and there's still 400, the same 423. So we're hitting something right here. But my point is, to his point, is it normal for these cycles to? So I'm kind of coming down and out of this thing, but yet still good things going on, and I got to be here for the show. I can't be,
Right.
which is easy to do once I start talking to you. But is that what is that a cycle? Is that what you would describe as
Yeah.
maybe a
Yeah.
cycle? Maybe.
I think, it can look a little bit like feeling down or restless. It can just be exhaustion. I like the term knackered, Knackerd, which is just
Okay.
like
What's
dead
that?
exhaustion because they take horses to the knacker when they are going to slaughter the horse because it's old and tired and can't keep going. And
Oh,
sometimes I just feel knackered. I just
I like that.
and and a lot of times, all I really need is one good night of rest, but sometimes I need more than that. And sometimes it comes across as, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling discouraged. I feel like I bombed a podcast that I did not in any way bomb. Um, Sometimes I just feel restless and I don't want to work on any of the not only any of my work projects, but I don't want to paint or listen to music. I just want to, watch a stupid movie and not have to think.
Yeah, no, that's sometimes the greatest gift in the world right there. Now, we do have a woman finally showed up here. Now, it's funny though. Look at this. Her and him, Danny. So Rochelle and Danny. These are the last two questions that I think we can kind of slide off with a closing comment. What you want to leave everybody with, and a wave. I'll catch you in the green room as I close it down. But they both ask the same question, like right at the same time. So Rochelle says, can rest and naps actually boost focus, which is what we are just talking about, for the ADH minds? And then the man says, can rest and naps actually boost focus for the ADH minds? So obviously, and I know why this is coming out. I'm pretty sure. I don't recognize his name, Danny, but I do know Rochelle's been on the show a number of times. Great, and I recognize it because who's my favorite author? Hemingway. So it sticks in my mind, right? But as this comment here, this question here, I think it comes up, and it's funny that, and I brought it up. A guy and a girl at the same time asked the same thing because society, I think, I mean, we've gone through little cycles where they say take power naps, and you all that's good and all that. But as a general case, corporate society, I mean, if I had my head hanging down on my desk, they'd probably think I was hungover from the night before or something. But I know why this. I'm pretty sure I know why, because now are we starting to be able to talk as though in aspects where non-neurodivergent and neurodivergent are living in the same world, and some of these things that we've investigated over time are now being pushed back, that's lazy, or that's you're not being productive, you're at your desk, you should be pumping workout, that I think because society has framed it in different ways, and currently in a way that's against neurodivergent. Sorry, I'm stumbling here. But answer the question, and I think I get it. I get why the question's being asked. And then
Oh,
roll in.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Rest is just crucial. I mean, and sometimes it's hard. We get going and we're on a roll with a project, whether it's something fun or something for work. And, I notice that I start feeling like a tension and like I'm forcing myself to keep going, and I stop. And even just a few minutes of rest or a short nap, I come back and I'm on a roll. I'm just, you know, it's it's a case where I think we get too focused and we start moving in too straight a line because we're tired. And then we
Mhm.
start losing our focus because we're tired. And even just a short nap, a shower, uh, even a walk, some kind of a rejuvenating little ritual really can improve the focus and help us, get back to doing what we're trying to do. Even if that's just, you know, reading a book, you know, or, working on a fun project.
I'll tell you what, this show is everything that I had hoped it would be, and talked about everything I hoped that it would talk about, and addresses. We should stay in contact too. Maybe do a follow up after a little
I,
bit
I
of
love
time
that.
here. Obviously, your subject matter is important, certainly to this platform, but realistically, it's important everywhere. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was still a very famous, cutting edge curiosity to even the modern world. And he was that was 18, what, 16, 7, I don't know, long time ago. So obviously, um, there should be more. That should be less common of an instance. And with work like from folks like you and the work within your book, maybe more and more people who are, have those trait capabilities, let's call it, this different operating system. Um, there should be more Leonardos out there. And there are, but now we can help develop that. Why don't you give a final, lasting comment of what you want to leave everybody with for this show till we do the next one, and then hang out for me in the green room, and I'll close her up, and you can see producer Barbie on the outro, and we'll do all those fun little things to wrap up this show, and then I gotta run. So last comments.
Just want people to know you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. There is so
Touche.
much right with you. And I would love to continue my conversation with your listeners,
Oh,
Rod.
hey! I'm sorry, Angie. I should have asked you to do this a long time ago. When you wrap up, can you put your contact information in the private chat? You see where that is on the
Sure.
right side? And I'll
Yeah.
copy and paste it over, because you know what happens. You do podcasts an hour after the show, a minute after the show closes, a year after it closes. Somebody's going to say, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I needed to hear from Angie. I don't understand this though." And if they leave comments on the which I love them to do on the show itself, that may not get to you as quickly as because I don't check that
Yeah.
email. But if they got your email or whatever, put that in. Oh, you got it in there. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll copy and paste this. I'm going to jump.
Yeah. I invite people to visit me at profoundcreativity.com. It's just the words profound and creativity together.com. And I have a little uh, freebie that I give out welcoming people to my world and talking about spiral productivity and the spiral life. And I always love hearing from people. I love answering questions and just hearing about people's lives.
I'm sitting there talking to you, and I'm not even on stage. So I got the right information there. Productivity, our profound creativity.com. and Angie can you say that? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my glasses today.
Angie at profoundcreativity.com.
Which is what you just described a minute ago. Why don't you give everybody a big wave? Let me close up here, and I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah, that was awesome, folks. That was Angie, awesome. Very, very, very good subject matter. Well displayed, well put forward, and I look forward to hearing more about your journey and the books coming that I assume would be following. I know your mind. So, with that said, I am very excited about, we're a little over 22,000 now, I think, across our social media subscribers. So please subscribe. We've got a new sponsor coming up, eLeaf Lab, and we'll be talking plenty about them in a little bit. The newsletter is really gaining some exciting traction. I'm excited to butt that up against the column that I'm now writing in the Mangum Star newspaper, and this message has been something I've been looking forward to for a little bit. Every time these topics come up, they're critical and important because there's so much talent in this world. And here's an example. I have a little plug for the Regeneration School Project, but when we create that fifth core called life into that school system, we have the ability to really start opening up and looking out for that next generation's extensive growth. And with that, this is Insights and Straight Talk. I am your host, always your host, and only your host. I love you guys. Go say hi to somebody today. Go wave at somebody. Get that vibe going. Keep working on that. Well, you're going to hear a lot more about the Regeneration School Project pretty soon. It's really starting to take hold, to get traction. And I'm Rod Duff. I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.